morning and welcome to Autism Live. I am Shannon Penrod. We haven't seen you that much lately because various and sundry things have been going on. But we are here today live. Today is Wednesday. I don't know. It's October 20 something, 2022. It's the 20. Chris is giving me signals back there. It's the 22nd of October 2025. And we have been very busy, my friends. So I apologize we weren't here yesterday with Dr. Doreen, but if you've been watching the show, you know it's we call it being in the shoot. We're in the shoot because this Saturday is the 4th annual All Ghouls Gala. So we've been working hard to make that just the memorable event of the season. I want to give you an update. The event is completely sold out. Like, I don't have room to stick somebody anywhere but in the swimming pool. So it's completely sold out. But of course, we will still take donations. And I want to encourage you. It's such a great charity. And that's really what it's all about. This is a fundraiser. Raising money for grants for autism care today. I can tell you that there is right now a grant phase open for autism care today, that if you are in need of something for yourself or your family that has to do with autism care and treatment, you can fill out a grant application right now. I know we had originally told you that the grant was going to close on the 18th, but they have officially extended it until the end of the month. So you have until Halloween to get your application in. Let me remind you that you can, hi Bug Hot Wheels, so thrilled that you're here with us. You can request anything up to $5,000 that is for autism care and treatment. Let me put a fine point on the end of this that the money can never go to a person. It can only go to an entity. So if you decide, for instance, that what you need more than anything else, that you've not been able to find the funding someplace else, maybe, you or your child needs an iPad. So you get to pick where you want to buy the iPad from. It could be from the Apple Store. It could be from Amazon. You fill out the application. You tell us exactly which one you want. Tell us the item number, what the cost is, so on and so forth. If your grant is funded, what will happen is that they will send the money to that entity and then the product will be shipped to you. So you could ask, for instance, for speech therapy, but that money will go to the speech therapy company, not to you. So just to be clear about that. Same thing with, you can ask for money for copays, then it will go to whatever your insurance or the provider that's providing the service. So you have until the end of the month. So we're raising money for that at the All Ghouls Gala this weekend. I want to remind everybody that we've got 2 amazing honorees that we give the Lending Your Voice Award to. The Lending Your Voice Award, it goes to a person or an entity that has furthered the conversation about what it is like to be on the spectrum in a meaningful way that's positive. So first of all, we're awarding the Lending Your Voice Award to Chelsea Darnell, who is an amazing young woman who's been on the show a couple of times. She has done so many things in her young life to further this conversation. She created a social group called Movie Chat for the Ed Asner Family Center that we talked about endlessly during the pandemic. During shutdown, if somebody had an adult child and would write into me and say, I don't know what to do because they have no social outlet, I would tell them about Movie Chat. So many people signed up for it. They had to open another so that there were 2 Movie Chats, and it ran all through the pandemic and it was free. Can you imagine what an amazing, amazing resource? They would watch a movie, that you would be told like on Monday what the movie or movies were. And then you showed up to the social group on Saturday and they would start to talk about the movies. Sometimes they would have celebs from the movies be there. It was all a Zoom call. But then people talked and it was a really brilliant thing. So imagine doing that. She was still a college student. She has since graduated with her master's degree, and she is the social director at the Ed Asner Family Center now, very deserving. But she is also a producer, a casting associate on Love on the Spectrum, which is a wonderful thing, and she works very hard there. She also is a teacher teaching improv. She's an actress. She does improv and acting, and it's just brilliant. So we're so thrilled to present this Lending Your Voice Award to her. And in addition, we are also giving the award to Love on the Spectrum, the show, because we believe that they have globally spread the word that adults on the autism spectrum are people and are people who have hopes and dreams and fears and concerns. And one of the things that they want in this life is to be in love with someone who's in love with them. What a simple message. And for those of us in the community, it's like, duh, right? But what we have seen is that it wasn't for the rest of the world. And that this show in all its entities, first they did it in Australia for 2 seasons, now there have been 3 seasons in the US, it shows people, and not only that, it gets us rooting for these wonderful individuals, hoping that they will find love. That's a powerful, powerful thing to change people's minds and enlighten them to the fact that these individuals, of course, want love. But it's a powerful, powerful message. So we're so thrilled to be presenting those 2 awards to those, to Chelsea and to Love on the Spectrum. Aside from that, it's going to be an off-the-chain party, I just want to say. And thrilled that we have so many wonderful celebrities who are going to be joining us as well. All these people that we have chiming in and saying hello. Hi to all of you who are watching live. I'm taking the messages from Chris on my phone, so I'm a little bit behind here. I'll get to it. But anyway, thrilled to be here because today we're going to be talking about diet. Now, this is a subject that, my goodness, has, there's so much to, I'm going to put that to the side for a moment. So much to say about this, and I think it's very confusing for people. And it used to be, when I think about, so we've been doing this show for 15 years. And when I think about in the beginning when we talked about diet, I know when I would talk to experts, a lot of times we would start by talking about the gluten-free, casein-free diet. That seemed to be the big thing at that time, but very quickly that changed into a bunch of different diets. But I really love to revisit this every once in a while because conventional wisdom changes a little bit, because the food changes, the science gets clearer. I don't know that science changes. The science gets clearer about what's important to our bodies, but also to bodies that are our children or our adult children who are on the spectrum. So today I'm going to try to give you sort of an overview of what we have learned in the last year from some of the greatest minds in the field about diet and autism. So as we start here, I feel like I left something out. Did I? Oh, well, I forgot to tell you all the places that you can be watching us. You can watch us live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. But also we podcast this entire show in audio only. So we're available wherever you get your podcasts. So check us out there. It is a free download. And I want you to know that's something we're really proud of. For 15 years, we've had all kinds of people come in and say, oh, what a thing you've got here. And it should be membership only, or you should charge this, or now people are after me to start a Substack and charge people. It's just not my thing. I just don't want to charge people for information. But, we hang on by our toenails and fingernails sometimes so that we can keep the lights on here. Let's be honest about that. So when you do download the podcast, I want you to know that you will hear advertising. That's what keeps it so that we can make it free for you. And we've been doing that for 15 years and just barely eking it out. But we're still eking it out. If you, however, sometimes people say to me, yeah, but I don't want the advertising. I get it. I understand. Sometimes you're on the treadmill and it's just, it interrupts the flow of what you're thinking and learning here on the show. But we do have a way for you to do that. But for that, we ask for a small monthly fee, which is $5 a month. You go to glow.fm/autism-live. You will get everything that we do new. Anytime we do a new podcast, it will go directly to your inbox and it will be ad-free. So that's a pretty fabulous thing. So check that out. It's $5 a month. There you go. All right. I'm sure I forgot something else, but I really want to get into this. So let's go to the first slide here because you know me, I always like to have a little disclaimer. And the big disclaimer here is one size does not fit all. I'm going to share a bunch of information today. You're going to take what works for you and what works for your body or your child's body, because it's different for everybody. We all have these ecosystems. There are things that I can eat that my best friend cannot eat, and vice versa times 700, right? There are so many things that I cannot eat that everybody else can eat. And that's just us. That's who and how we are. So why would we think that individuals on the spectrum would be any different? They're not. There are certain things that they can handle and certain things that their ecosystem can't handle. So it's not a one size fits all. And beyond that, there are other health concerns in addition to sensitivities and allergies, and what we need nutrient wise and where you live and what you're impacted by. So it is not a one size fits all. There's nothing that I'm going to say that's across the board, you have to do this. So just know that. I used to, when I was a stand-up, I used to do a whole set on, one size fits all is, first of all, that's not true, right? In anything, clothes or anything. And then they started coming out with one size fits most. That doesn't even work, right? So let that go. Listen for what makes sense to you. Implement what makes sense to you and what you can. But I really want to impress upon you, this is not stuff to lay awake at night and worry about, because I love the serenity prayer. Accept the things you cannot change, have the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, you can't make all the changes that we're going to talk about in one day, nor can you be pristine upon it every single day of your life. So let's all take a deep breath and greet this material with okay, what would I like to change today or this week? And not try to take on the entire thing. But I will tell you, all of the experts have told us in the last year that there is a different progression that they are recommending, not starting with the gluten-free, casein-free diet. They're recommending starting with something else. So let's go ahead and start kicking this off with reducing toxins. This has been the topic of the year that we have revisited many times with many different experts. I want to remind you that back in April, we did a show that was called the P2I panel. And if you haven't watched that, I really want to suggest that you watch it. But I also want to reiterate, because Dr. Granpeesheh mentioned it on Ask Dr. Doreen a couple of weeks ago, we were given, I'm not even holding all of it here, the rest of it's down here, but a huge packet from the P2I panel that we're happy to share with you. And for those of you who have written and asked me and said, Shannon, I would like the P2I stuff, I've emailed it to you. If I miss somebody, let me know. But you can write directly to me and just put in the subject line P2I material or P2I papers, and I will send it to you. My email is shannon@autism-live.com. There's no cost. Nobody's trying to make money on, but this is information that we believe will be helpful to people. Now, just a reminder that P2I is a wonderful, wonderful project that they were looking at. It stands for Pregnancy to Infancy, P2I. And they've been looking very closely at what affects pregnant women and their chances of having an individual that ends up being on the autism spectrum, and what happens for kiddos either that are siblings of individuals on the spectrum or people who are on the spectrum themselves. What's the best way that we can get them as healthy as possible? So, and what they have found extensively is that by reducing the toxins, whether it's in the mother's body before conception, during pregnancy, or afterwards, makes a big, huge deal. But also during infancy, reducing toxins for children because their brains are going is a big deal, and helping them to be healthy and for them to learn, and potentially the effects of autism being greatly diminished. So the P2I has been doing that research, but the reason why we had the P2I panel is because there were two other studies that came out, one called Protect and another one called Echo. And in both cases, those studies were looking at toxicity in pregnancy. They were not looking at specifically autism, but the research that has come from these 3 studies combined is overwhelming, suggesting that, we need to really reduce the toxins in our bodies and that we need to reduce the toxins in our children's bodies. So we always used to talk about pesticides here. Let's take a second to talk about pesticides, in particular organophosphates. So, if you live in any kind of, or have ever lived in any kind of farming community or visited it, there's a lot that's going on the farm, and every year the bugs are different. So what pesticides are needed and on what produce is different. So it's not like I can just say to you, well, corn is fabulous, and it doesn't matter if you get corn that's organic or conventionally grown corn. It really is going to depend on the year, what bugs have come to visit. But very briefly, because I think whenever I talk to people about pesticides, their brains, I watch them, their brains kind of turn out, and they're like, I'm not buying into this. Shannon, I'm not going to be a part of this. I'm not going to now stress about pesticides and buy organic things and only go to restaurants with organic food, and I'm not going to be one of those people. That's okay. I embrace you. But before you close your mind to that, let me tell you what has changed a lot of our minds. Pesticide, to me, would mean kills the bug, right? Pesta, bug, side, killer, so bug killer. And so, that has nothing to do with you or I or my child, except it's wrong. Pesticide is not what pesticides actually do. What most pesticides are, and certainly what organophosphates are, they're, and now I'm going to have a brain fart. They're disruptors of your neural functions. So there's a neurotransmitter disruptor. That's the word I'm looking for, neurotransmitter disruptors. So the messages that your body sends to your brain, it disrupts those messages. Now already, that makes my heart go, ooh, because what am I feeding my child? And I don't want anything that disrupts that. Because, especially when he was little, I was like, we're hoping for language. And I don't want neurotransmitters disrupted. But if we talk more specifically about what's the reaction that a bug has to a pesticide? It doesn't kill them. What it does is it disrupts those neurotransmitters. And so the body is saying, I'm hungry, right? And the bug should go and eat. But when it disrupts the neurotransmitters, the bug gets distracted and it moves its legs a lot. It becomes unable to focus on the fact that it needs to eat. Hear me say that. The bug cannot focus on eating, and so the bug is distracted and moving its legs a lot, and it ends up starving to death. That's what a certain amount of pesticides does to a bug. If you dump more pesticides on, what happens is the legs start moving so fast that at a certain point, everything just kind of glitches out and the bug becomes paralyzed, literally paralyzed. And then after, a huge amount of movement, and the bug cannot eat and the bug starves to death. So let's just think about our children and the rise of ADHD, right? And that the first study came out in 2011. That's how long ago? 2011. The first study came out and showed that the amount of pesticide in a child's urine correlated directly to their ADHD-like behaviors. So if they reduced the amount of pesticide in the diet, then there was less pesticide in the urine and there were less ADHD-like behaviors. And that study said, obviously, we need to do more research. They have done more research, and pesticides are not good for our children. Now, I know there's like a part of us that goes, okay, yeah, well, that follows, right? But when we get to the grocery store, it's hard because you need to feed your children, and you cannot get paralyzed and not feed your child. I remember when that study came out in 2011, I was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I can't afford organic. This is terrible. And I was talking to one mom and she was like, yeah, it's so bad. I refuse to put stuff into my children's body. So a lot of times I just give them spaghetti noodles for dinner, and that's it. And I remember being like vibrating with horror. Like, first of all, if it's, I understand she doesn't want to give them corn that's dumped with pesticide, but then the wheat that made the pasta, like, is it organic spaghetti? And it wasn't. So you can get yourself tied up into a knot, but you don't have to, because there's an amazing place, the Environmental Working Group. It's EWG.org. I had to think Environmental Working Group. EWG.org does this research for all of us. Every year they come out with a new list. They call it the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And the list comes out, I think it came out in July this year, because they really need to look at the produce and what the bugs are and what's having pesticide dumped on it. But you can go every year and look and see what is the general consensus. And it tells you, here are the 15 things that it doesn't matter whether you buy it organic or not, because it didn't have bugs this year. And a lot of pesticides weren't grown on it. And they've done tons of research and looked all over the country. And they're like, these 15 things are safe to buy conventionally. Woo! But then there is the Dirty Dozen, and those, to be on the Dirty Dozen means that across the board, there are a lot of pesticides on it, and that you should avoid it at all costs. Even if you're having it in a restaurant, it would be better not to eat it than to, and not have anything than to have these things, because it's going to have an impact. And there's so many things on the Clean 15 that are wonderful. Some general, if you're at the grocery store, general rules of thumb, if you're like, oh, I can't get internet on I don't have the Clean 15. So general rule of thumb is anything that has a peel, that you peel the peel off before you eat it, that is like a barrier for the pesticide. It's not perfect, but, in a bind, usually things that have a thicker skin have less pesticide residue in them, because you can take the skin off, and that's, reducing the pesticide. But also you can tell by how much they're charging. If there are two bins that are sitting next together, I don't know why I'm hung up on corn today, but there's the bin, and it says, it's just conventionally grown. It just says corn, right? And it says that it's right now it's on sale. You can get 5 years of corn for $1, and you go, woohoo, we're having corn on the cob tonight. And right next to it, there's a bin of corn, and it says organic. Compare the prices. If there is a huge price difference, it means that the conventional very likely has a bunch of pesticide on it, and they're going to charge you a premium for getting the ones that don't have pesticide. If it's like, 10, 20 cents different, so if it's 5 for $1 over here, but it's 4 for $1 over here, then chances are it doesn't matter, right? It's a minimal amount of money, and it probably doesn't have the pesticide on it. When we, which is cruel, because when we see the big price difference, it matters, and it costs us so much more. I always encourage people, find out if there's a farmer's market in your neighborhood. Go to the farmer's market, talk to the farmers. You'll find that some of them, they'll be really honest with you, and some of them will tell you we're not organic, but, here is what we don't put on our vegetables, or here is what we do put on our vegetables. And when you feel trust, we did that for years. Then we moved, and I haven't found the farmers that I, regularly can talk to. But now, there's so many grocery stores, even Walmart has a section for organic stuff. Yes, it's so much smaller than the other section, but there's good stuff there. So every store has an organic section. So definitely that. All right, now let's talk about the phthalates. I don't want to talk about this. Can I tell you, I want to hide under my bed. I don't want to be freaked out by this. But I want to read to you from the P2I. It says, these are endocrine disruptors, meaning they interfere with natural hormone signaling. Oh, that sounds like a disaster in our bodies and a disaster in our kids' bodies. So really important. One of the key risks that phthalates have been found to be guilty of is behavior issues. Exposure has been linked to higher prevalence of aggressive and disruptive behaviors, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD, and other symptoms in children. Yeah, I know. It's not what we want to hear. Where are we seeing these now? Used to be that when we would talk about phthalates, that they're in personal care products, that they're generally in plastics and in household items. So we do want to start looking at toys and things of that nature. But today we're talking about diet. And I used to be like, well, there's no phthalates. It's in your lotion. It's not in your diet. Except that now so much food is packed in plastic. And it's leaching, my friends. It's leaching. So the recommendation is don't buy food that's packed in plastic. That's exhausting, right? But it's important. I'm going to put this to the side. Okay, then we have BPA. I don't know if you noticed, a lot of times I come in here with a water bottle because it's just easier for me because I'm a really clumsy person and I hit my water bottle and, if I had a glass, it'd be everywhere. But I specifically made myself remember to bring, this is a glass bottle, you guys. It is in a rubber sleeve that does not have it does not have PFAs, phthalates, and other things. It was expensive. But I can pull this off. I don't ever. I put it right in the dishwasher with the thing, but there is a glass bottle under here and it has a great locking system. We've got an amazing water bottle on this year's toy guide that does not have all these chemicals, which is important. But there are two ways that we get big exposure to BPA. One is through water bottles, and the other one, I know you're going to hate me, is from getting receipts at the grocery store. Most of the time, the receipts are coated in BPA. It's one of the reasons why, how if you ever leave a receipt in your car and the sun comes and it turns like a weird color, that's because of the BPA in it. So when you're handling receipts, you need to wash your hands before prepping food or sticking your hands on your face or on your child's face. Like, have wipes to get that crap off of your hands. But going to water bottles that do not have BPA, very important. You can buy all kinds of plastic that do not have BPA. They all say, when my son was a baby and I was looking for glass baby bottles, and baby bottles that did not have BPA, and I was a little bit nutty about it because I'd heard it was bad. Everybody looked at me like, that's not a thing, and now it's everywhere. Everything that you buy, dishes or anything of that nature, look at it and make sure that it's BPA free. Okay, then there are the PFAs. This is another one that I just don't want to talk about. I don't want to think about it because PFAs, these are what they call the forever chemicals because they're not going away. They won't go away. And it's, you want to minimize, but there's no way you're going to get rid of PFAs. Do not make you crazy. But what do? They disrupt endocrine function, alter immune responses, and accumulate in the placenta and breast milk, leading to serious health risks for both mothers and infants. This is specifically about pregnancy. Sources of PFA exposure: contaminated drinking water. They really urge that you get a water filter. You don't have to get a whole home filter, although if you can, that is better because if you're taking a shower or bath in it, you're bathing in it, right? Food and food packaging, processed foods, fast food wrappers, non-stick cookware. They all leach PFAs into the food. In February 2024, the FDA announced that substances containing PFAs were no longer being sold into the U.S. market for the use of grease-proofing agents on paper food packaging. So think about all the paper products that have that little bit of grease thing that we all ate for the longest time. Apparently, PFAs in our food. Yeah. They also are in household products like stain resistant carpets, waterproof fabrics, tablecloths, napkins, and cosmetics frequently have PFAs. So we're talking about diet today. So we want to make sure that the dishes that we're feeding our children don't have PFAs and that our cookware doesn't have PFAs. Now, you can't make yourself crazy. Do you know? I want to urge you not to throw out all your pans today. Don't do that, right? But take a look at it and then make good choices. Maybe you have one pan that it does not have coating on it, and you look up your other ones and see that they don't say PFA free. And so you go, all right, I'm going to make a long term plan to phase these pans out, but I'm going to primarily use this one pan in the meantime. Don't make yourself crazy. Don't be throwing stuff out. That's not the ticket here. We're just doing the best that we can. But this is the number one thing that we encourage people to do for diet first. And this, we've heard this from all of the experts: reduce the toxins. It does not say get rid of completely the toxins, because that's not realistic. That's crazy making. So ask yourself, what can I reduce this week without throwing, maybe it's just you're going to get a water bottle and that's it. That's all you're going to do for this week. Or maybe you're going to go to the farmer's market, or you're just going to buy the lion's share of what you buy at the grocery store. Now is the moment, right? Everything is fresh at the grocery store, and you're just going to say, all right, I'm going to pay 10 cents more for some things for organic, and some things I'm going to look at that Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen, and we're going to keep a couple of things off of our table this season. Don't worry, next season it might be different. Okay, let's move on. So that's number one. Wait, we had a comment. Thank you. Chris is alerting me. Parker, I'm so happy to see you. And Parker has been so nice this last week. He wrote to us and let us know that Temple Grandin, that they have chosen to hang her portrait in the Smithsonian. And Parker, it just tickled me pink that you thought of me and Dr. Grampuchet to tell us. Parker says, how would this help our community members with ARFID? I'm going to apologize. I don't know the term ARFID. Can you please enlighten me, Parker? And then I might be able to help. Or I might say, I don't know, and I'm going to go look it up. So write back to me, Parker. Okay, so after we have reduced toxins, and let me just say this, reducing toxins is good for everyone. I guess I've always been a little spastic about this, because I have a nephew who's in his 40s now. And when he was a little boy, my big thing was that I would take him to the movie theater to see a movie. I just thought that was the biggest treat. I get to be Aunt Shannon and take him to the movie theater. Well, it was at a time in the 80s when, I don't know why, the phase was flavored popcorn. So if you went into the mall, they would have these huge places that had like a rainbow of popcorn on the stand, and then you could say, oh well, I would like a little orange, I'd like a little watermelon, and it was popcorn that had been sprayed with colors and flavors and whatever. And we have this funny thing in our family that I had said to him, okay, so what do you want for your snack? And he was like, oh, I want the flavored popcorn. And I stood there and I said, oh, but that's got so many artificial colors and flavors and preservatives on it. And he was little, and he hung his little hand up on the counter and he said, Aunt Shannon, we like preservatives. Right? And then later, when he was older, he and his sisters used to joke that when I had a child, that they were going to tie me to the end of the hallway and have him in a high chair, and they were just going to feed him preservatives in front of me. So I guess I've been a little spastic about it that long. But they're not good for you. And there's more and more science that has said that artificial colors and flavors are really bad for anyone. It's so bad, you guys, that in Europe, they don't allow it. Not to the extent that we allow it in the United States. I know that Halloween is upon us, that Halloween is coming, and already your child is going to things and people are giving them candy that is just, I beg my pardon, but it's poison. When you read what some of these artificial colors are based out of, they're petroleum products. It's not good for anybody. And I always say, if you want to do a study, Do it in your own time. Go to a birthday party. And for me, it was a Halloween birthday party because I remember it was a black cake that was a black cat, and so it was a black cat with white frosting, but the cake was black, and then you cut into it, and it was like a rainbow of colors. Super cool. The kids were all so excited, but my child couldn't have that. We weren't doing the artificial colors. We weren't doing the sugar. We weren't doing the wheat and the none of it, right? He couldn't have any of that. I brought something for him, like probably an organic tangerine. I know. And everybody was like, oh, she's one of those parents. Okay, all right, whatever. But I sat there with my son, and he probably had the tangerine, whatever, and the other kids had the cake. And then 20 minutes later, it was a madhouse, an absolute madhouse. Kids were screaming, they were hitting themselves and each other, and parents were like, oh, we've stayed too long. And within a half an hour, the entire party was over except for my child and the people whose party it was. And I was like, does anybody not notice what that just did to that group of kids? And everybody's like, oh, it's just they've been here long enough. I was like, they were fine before. I mean, I have seen this change some kids' lives. There's one friend that she saw that her son was just having these horrible meltdowns, and not on the spectrum. Horrible meltdowns after they would go to birthday parties. And we had this conversation about artificial colors and things. And so she tried it. She was like, I'm just going to pull him off of all artificial colors and flavors. And this little boy was fully verbal. And it was a few months later that he went to a party and she wasn't there, and he had something, and they had a discussion afterwards. And he was still very little, but he said to her, he said, Mommy, when they looked at the packages and he said, when I have that Red Lake 40 or 50 or whatever it is, he said, the monster comes alive in me. That's what it felt like for him. So please reduce or eliminate the artificial colors and flavors. And Halloween is a great time to, stand tall. And there are things that you can buy. I only give out things that have natural flavors and colors. There are stores, or you can get them online, and it's no longer more expensive than the other candy. It isn't. Sometimes it's cheaper than the other candy. I like to also give out pencils because I'm amazed at how many kids are thrilled with a new pencil. So I give things that don't have anything in them, but if I'm giving out candy, it's all with regular, no artificial colors or flavors, and they're available. You can find them if you want them. And then for your kiddos, there's a choice that you can make about when they come home. What is the first thing that we do as a parent when our kiddos come home? We sort through the candy because we're not going to let them have anything that's open, right? I was a kid when the first Halloween happened that somebody got a razor blade and an apple. Before that, we would get apples and fruit and things like that. And then somebody put a razor blade in an apple, and that ended everything. What happens? Parents sort the candy and say, you can have this. This is open. This is packaged. You can, and then you get, okay, so how about another litmus test that, okay, and we're not giving you anything that has artificial colors and flavors. Is it going to diminish what your child can have from their candy? Absolutely. But if you have more candy, you can supplement. But why are we giving them this much candy? You know what I mean? I former school teacher here, and a lot of schools do not cancel classes on Halloween, because that's a big thing, and you have the Halloween party and whatever. But a lot of them, if Halloween falls on a Thursday, they have no school the next day. Why? Because everybody stayed up so late? No, because those kids are so sugared up, you can't teach them anything. Hear me say that. So why are we doing that? In our house, we had the Lego fairy. So, because that was the thing that my son was into. I have a niece who had the Barbie fairy. You can pick which kind of fairy you want. But we said to our son, the Lego fairy comes to the house and they love candy. And if you leave them a bunch of candy, you will get a Lego. And the more candy you leave behind, the more Legos you get. And then we would take that candy, and we had several dentist offices in our community that would accept the candy and they would ship it to soldiers that we have overseas. What a wonderful thing. What a wonderful thing. And my child didn't have the candy and we didn't lose a week's worth of, learning because his system was all cattywampus. So I know I've just ticked you off and you're like, I had a whole Halloween thing planned. You do you, but notice how much time you lose after your child has ingested these things. And then maybe next year you'll be like, yeah, you know what? We're done with that. Or you could take some sort of a leap now and reduce / eliminate the artificial colors and flavors. You don't need them. They're not good for your kids. Okay, so on to the next one. Yeah, reduce the sugar. And I've already sort of talked about the sugar. Oh, there's so much of our kids' diet that is sugar, 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 sugar. And like I said, former school teacher, and it was one of the things that we would do is that we would use sugar to kind of keep kids awake. And we would, in my class, we would always have like a trivia day. And if you answered a question right, I would lob you some sort of sugar that the kids could have. I look back now and I'm horrified by that. But we're too centered around sugar, and that sugar is a reward and it's the treat. And I just want to say to you, we're setting up a stairway to obesity. I live there. Keeping it real, diabetes and other health problems. Do not boil your child in sugar. I will say that for my son, for the longest time, because we were in charge of what he was ingesting, that he just, even now, he is just not sugar driven. He's driven by other things, but he's not sugar driven. If he has, I know we waited a year to go to Star Wars and Disneyland, and all he wanted was the milk that they serve from the Star Wars bar. And I was so excited when I was able to buy him one and give it to him in the cup that looks like it's Star Wars and everything. And he had a little bit of it and he was like, "Oh, it's so much sugar. I can't even drink this whole thing." And for days afterwards, he's like, "Oh God, I had like my month's supply of sugar." It's a much smarter way to be. And he doesn't think of sugar as being Halloween, and he doesn't think of any of the holidays as being a sugar holiday. And I think that's a better way to be. So reduce. I didn't say take it out entirely, but there's so many ways to reduce the sugar. It's just better for everybody. It helps with the dental bill, the whole thing. So, okay, let's continue on to the next one. Okay, so then at this point, when we've eliminated all of these things, if you've reduced the toxins, if you've taken out the artificial colors and flavors, if you have reduced the sugar, you should already be noticing a difference in your child's behavior. And you should notice that your child is eating differently. Often they'll be eating more vegetables because once you take all that crap out, vegetables taste better. That's just a thing. And I know if you don't believe me, then try it. Try it for yourself for a week. Take all that stuff out of your diet and then eat vegetables. And suddenly a carrot tastes sweet, you guys. It does. So then the next thing that you can consider is the gluten-free, casein-free diet. And a lot of people think of this now as the gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free diet, which, some kids are very reactive to soy, and there's a concern about giving boys too much soy because it creates too much estrogen. You do you, right? I'm not as concerned about that. I'll be honest. I want good soy. If I'm putting soy into the diet, I want to make sure that it's organic and not dumped with pesticide. But other than that, I'm okay with the soy. But I know a lot of people very not on the soy train, especially if they have boys. But let's talk a little bit about the gluten-free, casein-free diet, because so often when I meet a parent and I say to them, "How is your child's diet?" First of all, a lot of times they go, "Oh, their diet is great. Oh, I feed them healthy, nutritious foods." And I go, "Okay, that's wonderful." Then we get a little further into the conversation. They're like, "Well, but they will only eat these 5 foods. And they're all wheat and cheese, products, which is why I put the pizza on here, because pizza is this wonderful substance that I love, but it's a wheat cheese sandwich, you know, um, with some other things, tomato sauce, which is so good, right? But if our kids are anytime your kid is only eating one segment of food or a very limited amount of food, it signals to you that there's other stuff going on. That maybe there's a food allergy, maybe there's a food sensitivity, maybe they have food selectivity and they only like this texture, and it makes it hard. And so often I hear people go, well, I'd like to try the gluten-free, casein-free, but my kid only eats 5 things. And so if I take those 5 things out, what are we going to do? And it is critical to make sure that your child is thriving, right? Failure to thrive is a very serious situation that we don't want to have. But if you've taken those other things out of your diet, I think you'll find that the GFCF is easier to go to. Plus, I don't have it yet, Chris. Plus, it's easier now because there are more places that have gluten-free and casein-free choices. Now, some of those gluten-free, casein-free choices are filled with sugar, artificial colors, PFAs. Like you gotta be thinking about all of that as well as gluten-free. We like to have foods in the closest state to what they were. The more it's processed, the more likely that we're getting ourselves into trouble. So it becomes hard. But you can get a gluten-free pizza. You can get a gluten-free, casein-free pizza. It exists. It exists like on every street corner. I now travel, and any place I go, I can put in gluten-free pizza, and it's a little bit harder to get the dairy-free, but a lot of places have it. I think it's really worth a try after you've done the other things. Is the gluten-free, casein-free the be-all that we all thought it was at one point? Well, I think what we've learned over the last 15 years is that it's not for everybody. That there are some people that don't have a big result. I'm always a little skeptical because I want to know, did you try it for at least 3 months? We used to say 6 months, but I'm mellowing with age. 3 months where there's no infractions, where you really allow the gluten and the casein to get out of the body. Did we really do that? And then realistically, like I would even ask a third person, because I know one family that was like, we did this, we didn't get any big bang, and we did it so religiously, Shannon. And then we stopped doing it. And I'm like, so how are things now? And they're like, oh my gosh, we're just having terrible tantrums and meltdowns, and they're out of nowhere. Nothing changed. And I'm like, but you changed the diet, I don't have another message, Chris, so I don't know. But anyway, I think it's worth a try. And I think it's worth tracking. And especially if you're with an ABA provider, and if you do the gluten-free, casein-free, I want to encourage you to tell your supervisor, the person who's in charge of your charting, that when you start it and when you stop it, and ask them, did you notice any behavior changes? So that you're getting a real number on it. For us, it was a game changer, but it isn't that way for everybody. And it was a quick game changer for us. When we took the milk out, the huge tantrum stopped. And I always refer to, I think it was 1983, that on the Dr. Phil show, not the Dr. Phil, Phil Donahue, 1983. Phil Donahue did a show where and it's highly unethical. It's just terrible that he did this. But the parents agreed, and it was life-changing for a lot of us. There were little kids that were on the stage, and they introduced their parents. The kids were talking. They were playing with toys, whatever. And then they went to a commercial break, and they said, during the commercial break, we're going to feed these kids milk. We're going to give them just a little carton of milk like what you get at the school, and then we're just going to keep taping the show. And it was mayhem. The kids were tantruming. They were screaming. They were crying because those kids were sensitive to milk. And when we took milk out of my son's diet, the big tantrums went away. But then we took the casein out, and within 5 days, he was adding 5 new words a day for a nonverbal child. That was a pretty big deal. That is not everyone's experience. And I have to say that and be honest about that. But I think it's worth a try. I really do. But I think you have to try it for 3 months and be tracking the progress and be honest with yourself. It's hard. Okay, on to the next one because we're running low on time. So then there's a bunch of other diets. And it's so on there we have not only the GFCF, but there's the GFCF SF. I think I left an F off. The soy free. Then there's the specific carbohydrate diet, the SCD. And we did the specific carbohydrate diet for a while. If you're seeing a lot of yeast, my child was only eating like potatoes and chicken that was like coated, not necessarily at the store, but like I would coat it in gluten-free stuff. So it's all carbs, all white things. And he had a yeast imbalance. So we did the specific, it's a little dicey though. I really recommend only doing it with a doctor because it's important to understand what's going on with your child, just like in the keto diet, which is very similar to the specific carbohydrate diet, but they're slightly different. But on a keto diet, you have friends who've done the keto diet, that there's a certain point where they're just eating protein and no carbs, and their body chemistry switches, and you're supposed to be checking your pH and making sure that everything's okay. You're supposed to be under a doctor's care when you're doing keto, right? And what we see very clearly with both the SCD and the keto diet is that it's easy to go into ketosis, which is when your body starts eating your muscles and your breath smells bad. So you need to be careful if you're doing these things and be working with a doctor. Although the keto diet has been very effective with kids on the spectrum, especially for those who have epilepsy. It's been very helpful in controlling seizures, but it's not to be messed with. You really want to make sure that you're working with a doctor who understands what you're doing diet-wise. Now, a lot of people have been very successful at doing a Mediterranean diet, which is easier to follow. Lots of fresh fruit and vegetables and more fish diet, and have had good success with that because it's easier and it feels more mainstream, but it's very healthy. There's the whole low oxalate, which has some good research behind it. The Feingold diet, which we did a modified Feingold diet. Feingold talks about certain foods being high, and I'm not going to be able to remember what the name of it is. Oh dear. So it's a different class of foods that you're getting rid of, things like tomatoes, but absolutely no artificial colors in the Feingold diet. I remember when my son was on it, he didn't have grapes, he couldn't have raisins, there were no apples. So very specific things that you're getting rid of. Then there's the GAPS diet, which is a very interesting. We didn't do GAPS with Jem, but I did GAPS. It's really for kids and adults who are having severe stomach and abdominal and gastrointestinal issues. It's really meant to heal your gastro system, but it's hardcore. I think, like for the first week or two, you're only supposed to have bone broth, and that's it. I would be so concerned doing this with a child, and make sure that you're under a doctor's care and that the doctor knows what you're doing. But we have seen some kids with severe gastrointestinal. It's like a reset, but it's not to be taken lightly. Body ecology, which I know less and less about. Like every time I think I know and then I find something, I'm like, well, I didn't know that, so I don't know. I don't want to speak about that, but that's a diet that's been in the mix recently. And then the rotation diet, which I actually think that there's something to, because a lot of our kids are very inflexible. And so they are going to just eat, 5 things. But then what happens, your body, if you are an allergic person, your body becomes allergic to one of those 5 things. And now your body can't handle the thing that you're used to having. So the rotation diet doesn't allow you or your child to have the same thing within 4 days. So if you have an orange on Friday, you cannot have anything that is orange for 4 days. And what it's doing is preventing your body from building antibodies to these things that you're eating on a regular basis. It's a challenge for kids who have flexibility issues. But I'll tell you what's more challenging is having a kid who can only eat 5 things and then all of a sudden they can only eat 3 things. Ooh, that's a whole different version of hell. So if you know that allergies run rampant in you and you're seeing it start to happen with your child, it's a consideration doing the rotation diet. Okay, I don't know. Do we have another slide? That's it. Okay, so I hope as you guys look at all of this, you've got lots and lots of choices here of how to supercharge nutrition for your child, make it as healthy as possible. And it starts with reducing the toxins. I think that even if you said to yourself from now until the end of the year that this is the one thing that you're going to work on, is that you're going to reduce the toxins in your child's diet. It's not going to mean eliminating anything. It might mean that you spend a little bit more to get something that's organic. It might mean that you cook slightly differently. It might mean that you go to a different grocery store, but it might be interesting to see what changes happen. I also think that looking at the rest of those, the water bottle thing, seeing if you can solve that, solving the water in your home, and stopping buying, like I just keep picturing kids. When I was a teacher, kids would come in for lunch and there were like different elements to the lunch. Like some kids would just come in with money and what they would do with the money is the school where I taught high school had a cafeteria, with all kinds of food choices, but there were machines. And the machines sold soda, right? Full calorie soda. And the other machine sold like flaming hot Cheetos, which, spoiler alert, let's talk about the artificial colors and flavors. Okay. I don't know. I don't think I've ever had a flaming hot Cheeto in my life. So I can't, but I know people who are like, well, Shannon, they're great. I'm sure, but let's talk about the artificial colors and flavors. So I would have students of different grade levels in the morning, and then I would keep my classroom open because some kids don't want to sit in the lunchroom. So they would come and hang out in my room, and I would watch what they were eating. And I would go, that cannot be what you're having for lunch. You're having a Pepsi and a bag of flaming hot Cheetos. Like, you're not going to be able to learn on that. And I remember when teacher conferences happened, I would say to the parent, because the parent would go, I don't know why my child is just not doing that well in all of their classes. And I would say to them, have you seen what they're eating for lunch? And I got in trouble. I got told you can't talk about that. Isn't that terrible? I literally was told you cannot talk about what their kids are eating for lunch. It was mind-boggling to me. But the point being, there were other healthier choices than that. But there were other kids who were coming in and they were having Lunchables. The parent would go and buy a stack of the Lunchable or whatever brand of, you know what I'm talking about, where you pull back the plastic and it's got encased in plastic, and the perfect little, cubby is the crackers, and next to it is the ham, and then there's the cheese, and they can have the ham and cheese and crackers together, but it's all in plastic. If you're going to buy that kind of stuff, look at it and see what is the plastic rating on it. Does it say right on it, does not contain PFAs? Because if it doesn't, it probably has them. And so you need to start thinking about, it's like if I wrapped this in an old fireproof rug for my child to take their lunch to. Rethink that. There are wonderful bento boxes that do the same thing, but they make them so that there are no PFAs and no BPA. But if you will take the time from now to the end of the year to really reduce as many toxins as possible, then notice on the first, are we seeing any kind of a behavior change? And I believe that you will find that you are. I really, truly believe that. I have met some amazing doctors in my life that are like, Shannon, I just don't believe that. And I was like, well, do the research yourself. Do it yourself. It's not that hard. Try it in your body and see if there is a difference, and then tell me if you're curious. And almost all of them have come back later and said, that bugged me. That bugged me, Shannon. So I tried it. I remember one of our behavior technicians decided that they were going to go gluten-free to see if it made any difference for them, because I was staunchly with my son with the gluten-free diet. And what they found out at the end of the month was that they were celiac and that their life was changed by it. They were like, I can't even believe the amount of ability to focus and pay attention, because I was in brain fog and I didn't even know it. So if need be, try it for yourself first. And because I think that, experiencing it is what makes people be a believer. But if you reduce those toxins between now and the end of the year, I really believe you're going to see a difference. Okay, my friends, we're out of time. I'm just checking to see if more showed up. It did not. Okay. So I don't have anything. Chris, if you sent it. Okay. All right. So I want to say that when we are next with you, I believe that we have a show with Dr. Grant Pichet on Tuesday. The All Ghouls Gala will be over, and we will be headed towards Halloween. It might be that we come in costume. I don't know. I haven't talked to her, but we'll see if that's a possibility. I know who she's going to be for Halloween. It would be very fun for her to come in, but that's pretty extensive. We'll see. We'll see if she's up for it, because she loves Halloween. Or it might just be that we show you some pictures. Okay, but we'll be back next week. We're talking about all kinds of things in the autism community, including Halloween. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.